Hi, folks. My name is Darren, as you can see up here. I'm going to be doing the
photo,
interviews.
by the way.
Yes, I like to have fun on LinkedIn. It used to be a Lego man, but apparently it needs to be a real person. Anyway, so Chris, would you like to tell us the journey story of how you came to the idea? So this is Chris Weir from Verida. Yes, Verida. Close enough. Sorry, folks. Would you like to tell us the story about where you came up with this idea and how you got to this stage?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, thank you very much, Steve. Steve has been fairly helpful for Verida and certainly provided some advice along the journey. So definitely appreciate Steve for that and this opportunity to share our story more broadly with the Australian blockchain community. So for me personally, I'm not an engineer first and foremost, I've got some grey hair, so quite a long time now in the technology space. And about a bit over 10 years ago, I started a company building CRM software for non-profit organizations. And through that process, had to deal and navigate with a lot of issues around private data, a lot of confidential information about individuals that were seeking support across Australia, and had to design software that was very flexible and adaptable for lots of different use cases. And fast forward a number of years in that journey, I realized there was a sort of a failing with technology where every time somebody went to a different service provider, they had to they had to retell their story and enter information into a different system before seeking support. And for some people, that's incredibly traumatic. They, might have a very traumatic experience, and they have to continually repeat that. And I realized that the individual was sort of lost in that journey, and it's actually dictated by the technology that we're using. And so I sort of went on a bit of a journey after that to sort of think of, okay, how do we reinvent this? How do we put the user back in the middle again? How do we have individuals own their own data and be able to share that consensually, do that in a secure way, a privacy-preserving way, and a way that does benefit the individual? A few years ago, we had the Cambridge Analytica hack, which some of you may remember, and there was a very interesting documentary about that. And that was ultimately about the exploitation of people's data and being used in ways that people didn't understand, didn't consent to. I guess for me, that reinforced the importance of how we solve these problems. And blockchain seemed to be a really good solution to address this. And I started to look at building a couple of products in this space because everyone was saying, hey, blockchain's great for, own your own data, own your own, crypto, own your own data. As a technologist, as I started to go down that journey of development, I realized there's actually a missing piece of Web3 infrastructure here. There's actually no solution today, other than, I guess, Verida, that allows people to have their own private data and store that in a decentralized way that connects to applications.
So just to be clear, you can own your own data, but on a public blockchain, everyone can see your data, okay? So you own it, but everyone else can see it. And that's a major problem when you've got private information that you obviously don't want everyone to see. And that was that like a problem that you came across when you thought this is a solved problem, or did you know?
Yeah,
from the
exactly
start?
right. I had assumed just by default, people talk about owning your own data. I'd assumed that meant that you could own your own private data, but it's actually with the blockchain, it's just public data. We have IPFS, which is a great technology, but again, all of that information is public. So this is if you think of the data in the world, probably. I mean, I'm only guessing here, but probably 99% of the data that's created is actually private. Our emails and our health records and our financial statements. And at the moment, it's a really important need that we have to solve this. And so if you're a developer today and you're building an application that needs to be decentralized, at the moment, you've only got the blockchain, which is providing decentralized computation. And you see lots of projects have their own centralized little databases here and there that's kind of a bit hidden and not really talked about. But we want to change that, and we want to embrace, I guess, existing Web 2, existing traditional business models, and allow them to transition across to the Web 3 space. And by we're effectively providing that underlying Web 3 infrastructure for private data and private messaging that's built on top of that can enable those existing applications and businesses to transition across to Web 3.
So to do that, you would have some identity around that. Is that something that you guys sort of spent much time on as well?
Yeah, exactly. So there is an emerging standard from the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C body that takes care of the standards around HTML and things like that. And they've been working on the decentralized identity standard. It's not a formal standard yet, but it's very close. And there's a lot of projects using that as the next generation of identity. You think of sign-in with Facebook or even the ability to have an email and a password. They're all different types of identity systems. The decentralized identity standard is aiming to become a truly decentralized approach to that. And what that means is that Just like with crypto and blockchain, as a user, I can create my own seed phrase, my own account, and that becomes my identity that manages my private data. People can message me on that. And obviously there's a tie in there to be able to secure my blockchain keys across multiple blockchains as well.
That's a big problem. Web 2 has very poor security. Usernames and passwords were not designed for you to remember 15,000 passwords. So everyone reuses them. And then we have sort of breaches all the time. And now we're doing 2FA and we're doing all these other stuff to try to solve this identity problem. And a solution like yours, that sort of removes most of that. But it actually comes with utility, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so it comes with the utility. So we have a single sign-on module for developers that can basically plug in. It's almost like a connect with Facebook, but it's connect my decentralized identity to sign into an application. And we haven't implemented this yet, but part of our roadmap is the idea of a trust framework. So when you start to think of private and public keys underpinning connections, we can actually create a really powerful authentication system that is user-owned and controlled, but is also incredibly secure and anti-phishing protection. So just very quickly, if you think about getting a sign-in request on your phone, we can cryptographically have that signed by the actual website that you are requesting that from. Their public key can be on their website. Their public key can be published to the blockchain. Their public key could be trusted and have a registry of that on the blockchain to say, hey, the Australian government trusts this particular entity that you're then logging into because they've signed this message. So I think there's a lot of interesting security issues that exist today in the Web 2 world that with maturity, the Web 3 world will completely eliminate. And that's obviously great for consumers.
That phishing, as we described, is actually one of the major attack vectors that's used to get into most systems. You get an email that looks like it's from a company, from some made up, and then you give your password to some third party, and then all of a sudden you're compromised on that site, and most people don't use a password manager, and it switches through and it's used over and over. So yeah, it's a big deal to sort of move. And I think you'll see that over time. And if you haven't, turn on 2FA, folks. One takeaway, turn off 2FA of everything. But on that as well, do you think that the way it's working with Web 2 and that login, we're almost like giving too much information away to the existing Web 2 businesses in that aspect?
Yeah, I think, you've got an email and a password. Obviously, to sign in, you're automatically giving somebody your email address. So there's, I guess, an identity there that's become quite important to us that we are kind of leaking in that process. The other part of it is obviously sign in with Facebook or sign in with Apple or sign in with Google has become very prevalent. And there's numerous cases, I guess, around, people then accessing your data as a part of that process and people not necessarily being aware of that. Obviously the ad tracking and things like that happen behind the scenes and start to build up this profile of you, in terms of the websites that you access. So I think that there's a lot of kind of hidden implications from existing Web 2 authentication processes that most people don't really recognize. Yes, exactly. So this I guess, future Web 3 world should be a simpler experience and a much more secure and privacy-preserving one.
Yeah, and hopefully one without a surveillance state. So beyond that, would you say that the way that some of these Web 2 have worked around is the collection of storage and the monetization to the centralized body? So now we're going to have like decentralized ownership of your identity, and now we're going to have private data. Do you think that that's going to like enable different business models? Because I believe that the Web 2 model has got bad incentives, if you understand what I mean, because the monetization is on the individual. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you are the product in Web 2. That's the common sort of line that is spouted, and it's true. In this new model, once you sort of extrapolate further and you own your own data, it completely changes the power dynamic. As a business, as an entity, if I want to access your data, I have to convince you. Now I can convince you because I'm providing an incredibly good product and service and there's value for me to share that. Maybe I've got a history of heart disease and I want to help support clinical research into heart disease. And so for nothing, I'll give that data to a research organization I trust and share that with them on a regular basis. And that's something that's valuable to me. In another scenario, perhaps, the data is, I'm not too fussed about it. I'm happy to actually earn an income or earn something and actually share that for a particular purpose and earn some tokens for that. So it's all about user control, user access, and user-driven decision making.
So do you see that also increasing like resiliency? Because you get like an outage for one of these central players and you're done for. Like GitHub goes down, half the world's development team stop. You think that that's coming?
Yeah, it sort of moves the problem space because it's decentralized. Okay, so if there's all these people in this room today, and if I want to access one of their, somebody's pieces of data here, there's a whole range of different servers that I could go to. There's no central point of failure, but really, really importantly, there's no honeypot. If, for instance, you have a centralized government system that has a whole bunch of personal identifiable information about me, that's incredibly attractive to hackers to go and find a way to penetrate. And they know that if they get in, they're going to unlock all of these individuals' personally identifiable information or use that and exploit that in some way. Under this model, everyone's data here is sort of stored in different places. There's no centralized attack point. And so the economics of actually performing that hack, it's almost eliminated overnight. So I think there's a lot of second and third sort of order impacts here that this new user-owned environment will create.
So would you see yourself becoming like an infrastructure piece in that decentralized web future? Or do you see yourself as like a retail first, where I come to you and you're like the one who helps me own my data? Or do you think you'll end up being plugged into a whole bunch of other companies?
Really good question. I think there's a real challenge when you're an early stage infrastructure provider, which is what we are at our core, is that you need end users to still understand it and be able to interact with that infrastructure. So we've actually had a two-pronged approach. We've developed the core infrastructure and the SDKs for developers to use that infrastructure. But to showcase how this works so it's actually usable, we've developed a reference implementation of a new, what we call a data vault. So it combines a crypto wallet, a traditional crypto wallet, but with the ability for users to create a decentralized identity, own their own private data and see that data, and then also unlock a decentralized messaging system on top of that.
That sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to have a play with it myself. So if everyone wants to know more about it, how do they find out some more about it?
So go to verida.io, verida.io. I really encourage anyone that's interested in this space to reach out. There's so many opportunities that I'm talking to people about. And if you're a developer or a community builder or somebody just passionate about this space, please reach out because there's so many opportunities out there today.
Well, I'm looking forward to have a go. Hopefully you do too. So thanks very much from us, and we'll be the next speaker now. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.